Okay, here's the video tour of my show, Slowing Time, at Space 1026. Here's a wide view of the show. Oil on panels, oil on unstretched canvases hung on magnets attached to metal brackets screwed into the walls, gouache on paper and panels, and a selection of drawings. Versailles is not too large or infinity too long for a cover of an upcoming B-Mask reissue on Unifactor of the same title. This one deploys a Sudoku style color plan with 8 colors. Each of the 8 rows has 4 cells. In each cell, all 8 colors are represented as a background, 4 foreground characters, and 3 further foreground smaller shapes. No cell repeats in the grid of 64. Across each row, there are 2 characters per color. In each column of characters, each color appears once. In each column of cells, each background color appears once, and so on. So the tricky and maybe accidental seeming balance here is achieved via the emerging quasi-symmetries and similarities of 8 applications of the same rule set on a common grid. 2021, Studio Judy. President Street theme, gouache on paper from 2011. Providence, New York City, Newport, Rhode Island. An earlier attempt at reaching a similar effect, but via a relatively naive lack of strategy. Here, a rotating dot grid over a magenta background form at the top decays into these more blobby, wormy forms at the bottom, giving it this seething movement. This painting was up in my house at President Street for about 7 years, so of all of these, this is the one I've looked at the most. Finished with gold and white fills. These little ones at bottom are quick ones from Lorimer Street, 2017. No title, going to JFK at 5 a.m. You can see this guy has a little backpack on. No title, a kind of character sculpture head seen through branches in the woods. These two from later, 2020 at Studio Judy, both takes on this image of walking upstairs into the furthest chambers of a decrepit castle past sweaty bricks, and at the top a spider drops down, a white face looms out of the darkness, and the castle landline is ringing. Just some of the good stuff. This one, second take at a painting of the Acid House smiley face. President Street, 2020. I come from dance music and feel like the paintings and music keep getting closer over time. I'd like to be able to keep putting more music into the paintings. Here are the cousins, 36 of these 37 serial drawings. I like that these came out pretty differently from each other and with some unexpected outcomes for what I still think of as a pretty narrow drawing system. I was drawing a few of these each week for a while, all the same basic way. Plug in the grid settings on the width and height of the characters, let the hand print the results. Left to right, bottom to top, no second passes. And what emerges is, in some days, I was seeing really loose ones, other times floral, other times jagged, sometimes like a bunch of rocks, sometimes sculptural, sometimes more figurative. These were drawn mostly 2015 and 16. I still draw these from time to time, but this first group of these 36, I think, reflects the way that practice in a time produces results that are better and go further than things you do as one-offs once in a while. A thing I feel that I know to be true that I'm trying to bring to bear on my other projects more consistently. These two up here, Armored Sculpture Idea Subway Panic Attack version 2018 at the White Page in Minneapolis, depicts a sculpture on a plinth on the subway. At right, still working on my zine 2017, Lorimer Street is a self-portrait sitting at my desk in President Street, coloring the cousins in Photoshop on a 27-inch iMac. You can see the colored cousins. You can see the result of that work, the colored cousins, on Jacob's website, Fujichiya, where they're installed in the Grand Ballroom, fujichiya.com. On the desk, we see a mug Shayla made me, 3 dice. 111 is President Street's address, a skull, my old knife, and my cat Nook's paw coming in from the right. Shouts out to Nook. Whiteout 21, oil on panel, Studio Judy, early pandemic, a straight ahead rotation of dots on a grid with the background brought back out to foreground, a riff on an earlier white painting that is in my brother's collection. The old gouache paintings, this one 2021, these come from a time where I was trying to make directly beautiful paintings, I think in part to see/prove if I could. I may be less interested in beauty as an end now. On an optical and results level, my mantra now is keep the eyeball moving. So I'm seeking sufficient complexity, depth, and movement to do that. Beauty is maybe more of a sort of secondary outcome of those things, I think, less a goal in itself. On a keeping it fun level, I'm also just more interested than I was at this time of these works in investing the paintings with the things that I look for in the stuff that I like myself, which are humor, an expressive drawing hand, confusion and unresolvedness, adventure, danger, abstraction in the Mulholland Drive sense. This stuff is simply aiming to be really total and really beautiful. It also turned out to be unsustainable to work this way. These all took so long to make. So, Beowulf painting, President Street, 2013, a version of the cover of the Seamus Heaney Beowulf, picturing the hero in chainmail heading out into darkness to fight the dragon, knowing he's going to die. This was a resonant image to me as I was beginning my career in software engineering and really struggling to adapt to that. I remember the work drinks that I was at where I had this idea and went home to start working on it. It's really funny to think about. This one, Joe's advice, use gray, about using gray in paintings. A tight grid painting with gray in there. This is the last one I made that includes text, something that I'd been doing in the earlier Providence paintings. At that time, I felt that, quote, paintings, end quote, were a distraction from, quote, my writing, end quote, and needed to be connected to it as projects explicitly by including text. Of course, now I don't make any distinction between my writing and painting or my drawing or any of my other projects. It's all the same thing and it's all the same stuff. The form and the form's language just really don't matter. They're all products of the same process of ideas finding their shape. Anyway, just a beautiful time-consuming painting. This one, Studio Chair, a painting of my studio chair at President Street, 2014 or so. This one of the earliest deployments of these little jums in my work, which later became the Cousins. A painting about the feeling of sitting there and working on an idea and the feeling of the idea exploding up and out of the scale of the room like a genie out of a bottle. I painted this at the drafting table in the front window of President Street and listened to Infinite Jest on audiobook headphones and was texting with Bella a lot about that at that time. This one, Pillar for Joe Buzzle, a memorial painting for my friend Joe, same Joe as the other painting, who left the planet in 2013. We lived together in Providence and we traveled parallel paths in a few ways, and I learned a lot from him and miss him. Somehow this was what I wanted to make when he died, and I did it listening through his catalog of music, which I still do. This one, Philadelphia is Burning and Watermelon is All That Can Cool It, 2017, from an Elizabeth Alexander poem called Overture Watermelon City that begins with that line, Lorimer Street studio painting. I wanted to make something that was graphic and recognizable with extreme energy at this point, like kind of moving out of abstraction. I think this is the first painting, or moving out of pure abstraction. I think this is the first painting I made that was an intentional result that I was trying to get to, and I actually got to it, whereas everything before this was more like an iterative approach on a line that reached some eventual but ultimately unplanned conclusion. This one was more setting out toward a goal and then getting to it. And of course, it doesn't always work out that way. Even though making this painting fundamentally changed how I make paintings, I think this is the first one I'd call the current era of my painting work. Not everything reaches this level of clear finishedness. I'm really proud of this one. This one, Infinite Jest painting, President Street Eschaton version. Painted this one at President Street in 2019. This one depicts play of the nuclear war simulation via tennis game Eschaton, as described in the novel of the title, which I had, as I just said, listened to the audiobook of in the room where this painting was made 5 years earlier. The book deploys the acid house smiley as the apocalyptic symbol of a piece of media so entertaining that it gets like closer and closer to your point of attention before like obstructing all other concerns. This face invading the frame and obscuring the tennis match was an idea I had for how to synthesize my sort of love for the book as a painting idea, but also it had just been something that Bella and I had been talking about kind of continuously and again in this room for many years. So that's this one. These small squash on panel at President Street in 2015, transitional work off of paper and onto panels, which was itself the transition into using oil paint via favorite painter Jordan Casey asking me during a studio visit why on earth I was using gouache anyway. Didn't have a good answer. I was also trying to move faster and be looser in these, and I still sort of like the results. They remind me of a nice time. The red one here depicts a guy making a little blue graffiti mark. It's a guy drawing on a train behind the Grays Ferry path mark in Philadelphia. The others don't have subjects exactly, except this one on top left, which is about Twitter and CB radio. The zigzagging line is a CB antenna. The furrier snaking line is Twitter. It's called Prime Minister's Beam / Wiggle Worms of Night Twitter. Prime Minister is Sir Mix-a-Lot, a master of CB radio in his downtime. Wiggle Worms of Night Twitter is my friends all being online at night at the same time, doing jokes and hanging out. I made this one at a time where I wasn't seeing everyone so often, so I was thinking about these things a lot. Broadcast in the night and voices heard on the wind, passing through on invisible radio waves, this kind of thing. This one at top right, also a Twitter painting here of the default avatar presented in space as a room-filling figure standing in front of a dining room table behind a chandelier. In the back of this painting at right is a recreation of a print by Mike Taylor that was hanging up at President Street, and at left is a recreation of my painting opposite, a studio chair. This is the first one that contains samples as a tactic. I'm now building paintings around samples and including samples in the dance music sense kind of a lot. But this is really kind of where I started. This one, Studio Judy theme, dance mix from Studio Judy 2020. A figure alone and static, but somehow dancing and moving forward. This one, a pretty intuitive pandemic painting, and that I feel really accurately captured the vibe of that time, and I'm still pretty nostalgically attached to this one. This one, For Fate in a Pleasant Mood, No Rolling Off the Table, Lorimer Street, 2017. For Fate in a Pleasant Mood is from Sun Ra. No Rolling Off the Table is a dice thing. This is a dice painting. In a moment of rolling dice, the first one hitting the table. Don't roll them off the table if you want the dice to be good to you. This one features empty beers, Yinglings, and red stripes with these ghost vapors coming out. This person flipping a coin that's in turn being struck by lightning. My old ficus up here on the top left at President Street that I overwatered and killed. Angel on a shoulder, Fates measuring and cutting the thread, Justice scales, the Wheel of Fortune, Tarot Fox shrugging in front of the full moon, this jumble of worms that says the title of the painting, but I rotated and obfuscated it to the point that I wouldn't consider this text legible, even to the extent to which it can still be considered text. Anyway, this is the first one I made that was big, which really gave me the taste / curse. Impossible to sell, impossible to store, impossible to move, impossible even to hang up, but so fun to make. The big ones just have such crazy presence. It's just so fun. Here we have Dracula painting, Leave Dracula Alone. Dracula is just trying to have a nice night, reading his book, takes off his glasses, got his little glass of wine or blood, and you can see he's invisible in the mirror. Got a painting of himself up in the background wearing the armor from Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Anyway, he's just trying to relax and have a quiet night in, but as always, they're just trying to come in and put a stake through his heart. But he wakes up at the last minute, slaps that stake away, and, he's really mad because, come on, let's just let Dracula be Dracula. Can I live? Can I unlive? I like this one. I feel like it's funny and crazy and accomplishes what it seeks to accomplish. New one here at the bottom. Robin Hood Takes an L, or Friar Tuck's Yo-Yo Trick is an Op, both titles at the same time. Either Robin Hood here is just jealously manifesting this shadow that moves through the painting holding a bow and murdering Friar Tuck for stealing his thunder. Unused to sharing the limelight, jealously taking this L, as Little John and Will Scarlet look on in awe at somebody other than him, or it's the Sheriff of Nottingham's guys coming in from the background, and nobody will listen to Robin Hood, who alone recognizes the threat and knows that the sheriff's yo-yo trick is a distraction. Cute stuff in here is this wanted poster with like the Looney Tunes pound sign and this scary tree from Mortal Kombat 2. The ribbon is maybe from like Albrecht Dürer, I guess, is like how I got into making these. But I thought that the idea of like a Dürer knot in a yo-yo string was sort of funny. And the idea that it would be Friar Tuck doing it somehow also very funny to me. The painting is extremely like from the drawing style I learned doing New York cartoons. This is like how I draw now, I guess, but I don't know. You know, it's also just the passing hand. This one, taking a bath, watching a movie, having an idea, worrying about money. This is me, or a version of me in a bathtub at President Street. You can see I'd put a computer on on top of a box on the toilet and would watch a movie in there. A little private space for thinking and zoning out, turning my wheels during those years. The wolf coming out, the serpent coming out of those weird hands of the toilet's tongue dangling, these twinned hands holding glasses of water. The imagery in here isn't really attached to anything. It's just the feeling of watching a movie in the bathtub at President Street and having an idea and worrying about money. This was the last one I made at President Street, early 2020. It's commemorative of the closable door in that apartment. This one, Mars Gas, Walk Like a Ghost, Brand New Dances Like the Nuclear Bomb, a painting of this notorious and important short-lived punk space, Mars Gas, in Providence, where the weirdest, freest gigs were happening in 2009, 2010. The title from Iggy Pop Nightclubbing. I'd, of course, love to see another terrible, boring gig there in the middle of the night, but like other spaces like it, it's gone forever. This is the vibe of someone walking like a ghost outside directly next to a nuclear explosion. This one, best readings done underground. I want to say 2017, 18 at Lorimer Street. This one, a character trying to read on the subway, but a lot of other stuff going on. A Poland Spring bottle with pee rolling past. Devil sitting next to you. Breakdancers swinging their Adidas right in his face. Trying to find privacy and do your thing despite all this other insane stuff going on around you all the time. That's New York. This painting about riding the train up and down to the Metropolitan stop from Carroll Street. Sufficient complexity for my friend Alex Fringes. All tactics at once in this one. The first oil painting on panel. Just a density of marks and colors on black. Not really depicting anything in particular. Just trying to include everything I knew how to do at the time. Made this one at President Street, probably 2014. Small studies at the top for the Mars Gas painting. One other thing I'll point out is that the book this character is reading from is the same editions of the Halder Laxton's novels that Dracula is reading in this one. They're both the samples from the paintings by Louisa Matthias-Daughter that were used as covers for those novels, which I love. Independent People, Laxton's Independent People, which Dracula's reading, a favorite novel. Just a little sample of a couple things I like recombined. I don't know. I want to point that out. I could probably say more, but that's enough. I've been talking for what feels like a long time, so I'm just going to stop there and call it a tour of the show.